the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan. If you've got a tip for Melissa, a mystery you need help solving, a skeleton you'd like to drag out of the closet, whether that creepy old guy in the vest giving people advice at Home Depot really works there or just thinks he does, anything, tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837. Or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. You just might hear your tip on the podcast. And now here's your host. There's no business like none of your business, and that's the business she's in, Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell. Oh, there's no business like none of your business, like none of your business, I know.
Yes, and you love none of your business.
Do. I'm going to start singing it like the Baby Shark song now.
Oh, please, yes.
Sorry, that will never get out of my brain.
Know, I'm sorry. I have to listen to the Baby Shark song.
No,
you don't.
Do that. No.
No, that sounds like a song too.
It does. I'm now becoming rhythmic. No, you do not, because once you hear it, it is a terrible virus that will infect your brain and you'll never recover. It's awful.
Please. Oh, it couldn't be that bad, right? Maybe I should find it online.
It's worse.
I can't play it. Yeah.
It's worse than that bad. It's worse than that bad.
I'll trust you on that.
You must. It's really bad. Really. Okay. And I love sharks. I am a big shark fan. I mean, not like the real ones like in the water, but I love I used to have a rubber shark as a child. That was one of my favorite toys ever.
I believe that.
It was about a foot long, and its mouth was open. It was hollow, and you could put stuff in it. I loved that rubber shark like nobody's fucking business.
I bet he was a very friendly shark too.
No.
No, he ate people?
He constantly was eating my Barbie's legs, and no, he wasn't friendly at all. But I loved him.
But you loved him?
Yeah.
Because he was lovable.
Yeah.
He may have eaten your Barbies, but
constantly.
Yeah. Barbie probably didn't mind.
Well, they're not real.
Yeah.
He never touched Ken, but he was real into the Barbies. He was. There was something, probably wrong with
kind of strange.
My little shark. Yeah, I wrote a little song about him, and
what was the song?
Well, it only had like one verse.
Well,
and
what was it?
Sung to the tune of "Strangers in the Night." With little rubber shark, do 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 do. Little rubber shark, do 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 do.
Oh, that's adorable. Yeah. How old were you?
I want to say 10.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Did you play with him in the bathtub and stuff?
I did. I actually did. I love that guy. I mean, I kept him way longer than someone should keep a rubber shark as a child.
Wow.
I'm going to guess up into my teens. Okay. Like maybe I started driving and he would sometimes go with me on trips. I think we should probably change the subject.
I think there's probably some people calling the police right now.
And if not, there should be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There should be people calling the police about me and my rubber shark problem. But at least it's not a Baby Shark song.
Oh, but now I'm going to be singing Little Rubber Shark.
I'd rather you sing that than the Baby Shark song, because once you hear it, you're going to... I'm trying to remember the song that I potentially planted in your head a week or so ago, and you were like, thanks a lot. Now I can't get that out of my head.
Oh, I don't
But whatever, I'm telling you, once you hear Baby Shark, your life is sort of over.
Well, okay.
It's literally.
All right, well, I won't. I don't want that to happen. So, you told me that I had to remind you to plug the fact that we need to get people to call, and we need people to rate and subscribe.
I am lame-o. That is my name, Lame-o. And Lame-o was her name-o. Everything's musical tonight. And I forget to ask, if you like this podcast, if you like the cases we cover, please go to iTunes or Apple Podcasts and rate and review. Say something nice if you like the podcast, especially. And if you don't like the podcast, the name of the podcast is Murders Are Us.
You almost did it again.
I almost said no. It's right. If you like the podcast, it's called Just the Tip-Sters, and if you don't, it's called Murders Are Us.
Right.
I don't even know if that's a podcast, but it would just please, if you have a moment.
If it's not, it's called My Favorite Podcast.
Yeah. If you have a moment and you like the podcast, please let us know. It is a wonderful thing that helps us. And, it's hard out here for a pimp, and it's trying to make the money for the rent. When the Cadillac and gas money's spent,
boy, this is a musical. Man, this is a musical edition.
I know. I can't. And the 3-6 Mafia won a fucking Oscar. That's all I'm going to say. Oscar-worthy theme song for Hustle and Flow. So yeah, it is hard out here for a pimp. So any ratings and reviews are tremendously appreciated. We really can't thank you enough. And typically what happens if someone, sends a message, I send them some swag. So I understand other podcasts actually sell their swag and get money for it. Oh, no, we give it away because we're stupid.
As your producer, may I just say we may want to, think about that and
I know.
Maybe eventually make it available for sale. But
again, have I mentioned that I'm lame?
So folks, take advantage of it while it's free.
Yeah, typically when people say nice things about the podcast, I say, if you don't mind sharing your address, I would be delighted to send you some shit. And I do. And people are very kind. And Tipster Sharon took a picture of the beautiful purple 24-ounce Tipster, just the Tip-Sters water bottle that went. Sometimes the swag travels more than I do. So this wonderful water bottle traveled to Washington, to all over Maryland, all last week. So I feel grateful that I can live vicariously through some of the podcast swag. Does that sound weird? Okay.
No, it doesn't sound weird at all.
Okay, good. I'm glad we got that out of the way.
Although we want you to tell us the truth about how you feel, and if you give us a particularly, incisive, constructive, critical comment, we still may send you some.
No. If you're critical, I'm going to wipe my ass on it and mail it to you. So you're going to get like a shit-covered tumbler. There's rules here.
No, she won't.
I won't. I'm kidding. I barely shit. I never shit. I'm just full of it. That's why. Yeah. So I might pee on it though. I could do that.
I wouldn't recommend that.
I won't. I was kidding. None of those things would enter my head. No, they would enter my head. I just wouldn't do them. So thank you if you do take the time. And if you don't, then I hate your guts. And you can still listen anyway. But we are very grateful we do have a handful of really wonderful reviews, and we're really grateful for those. And we would like more rates and reviews. Bless you, beautiful Tipsters. So we started last week, just the tip of the iceberg with Lonnie Franklin Jr., the Grim Sleeper. And this week we're going to discuss the victims. But before we continue, here's a promo for a wonderful podcast I think you should listen to.
Welcome to Haunting History, the podcast that reaches back into the past for the events that shocked us. Tales of true crime, mystery, and the macabre. And when we're lucky, those stories where the past and the paranormal meet. Because who doesn't love a good ghost story, right? I'm your host, Kat, and joining me every week will be one of my co-hosts. Either Haley, my partner in every idea I have, or Tress, my lovely sidekick in all things paranormal. Join us this season as we discuss and share true accounts from all over Southern California and beyond, from haunted locations to newsworthy incidents and crimes that stunned us. We will delve deep and find the people behind the headlines. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Haunting History Podcast, and rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. Also, visit our website at hauntinghistorypodcast.com. Until next time, remember, the living are far scarier than any ghost.
So, Lonnie Franklin Jr., what a fascinating guy. And it's even more timely when we hear that this week Samuel Little, 78-year-old Samuel Little, has been arrested. And similar, I really can't, it bothers me greatly to break down behaviors of serial killers by race, but it really is fascinating that 80% of serial killers are white males, probably a higher rating than that. And 80% of, that's probably the number I'm trying to get to. 80% of victims of serial killers are white female. So the large number, probably even a larger number than 80%, probably 90% of serial killers are white males. Like I said last week, there are definitely, Asian and Indian, and there are serial killers in every race and culture, but a large percentage white males. Very small percentage female, very small percentage African-American males. So the difference is apparently white males, when they are actually caught, sing like canaries. Big time, caw, caw, just like to talk about their shit and what they've done. And I mean, one of the more interesting stories to me is that Ted Bundy was giving out information as he's being walked to the chamber where he would have been put to death. Literally talking about victims. Oh, and by the way, when I attacked her, dropped an earring and found it, and I took that as a trophy. The other one's still on her. It matches. You'll be able to. I mean, it's amazing to me. So the fact that, Lonnie Franklin Jr. still to this day denies everything. And no matter what a huge amount of information and evidence they have against him. And Samuel Little, they're crediting a Texas Ranger named James Holland, who apparently was the first person to ever get him to talk. So he denied. He actually was convicted of killing 3 women in Southern California in the 80s. That's what he was already in prison for. And he stood up in the middle of that trial and screamed, "This is wrong. I didn't do anything, and I want a new trial." And that was when he was 75 years old. He's now 78 years old and finally admitted. He's admitted to 90 murders. They have corroborated
90?
90. They have corroborated 30 of those so far in this short period of time.
That's horrific enough. My God.
30 so far. It's a fascinating thing, and I'm sure we'll cover it when more information is known. Every serial killer has their method, their modus operandi, and apparently Samuel Little was a heavyweight boxer, and his MO was to knock the women out with a knockout punch. One punch, knock them out, and then strangle them while masturbating on top of them.
Oh, Jesus.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm quite sure, much like the Golden State Killer and potentially like Lonnie Franklin Jr., the Grim Sleeper, who we're going to talk about, there will be many more cases tied to these men. And while he admits to 90 across the country in about 10 different states over 56 years, I would imagine there's more. If he admits to 90, there's probably 180. And I'm really fascinated by what some of the social media threads are saying. Hey, some of these people were killed like this and this. He was a boxer. Perhaps he's the one who did it, and it was never tied to anyone. So it's, I said this back in April when Joseph James D'Angelo was arrested, but let me just say it again. It is heady times to be a person fascinated by true crime, because the advancements in technology, whether it be cell phone data or DNA especially, all of these advances are making it a fascinating time to be alive, to see things that may not have ever been given justice, and now they're being adjudicated in the correct way, and the right person who did it is being held accountable, and people that have spent time in prison or may have been under a cloud of suspicion who did not do anything are being exonerated. It's a beautiful, wonderful, scary, overwhelming time to be fascinated by true crime. So let's get into part 2 of the Grim Sleeper. So before we actually get to the first victim who is attributed to him, what they believe his first victim survived. I do not know how. And while she has not been definitively linked to him, every detective and police officer in the LAPD homicide division said, Yeah, it's him. It was his MO. So beautiful Laura Moore was waiting on a corner for a friend and at a bus stop. She was going to a party with a friend, May 29th of 1985. She's a beautiful waitress, 21 years old, and a man pulls up and offers her a ride. And she was like, oh, no, thanks. I'm good. He pulled up in a blue pickup truck, by the way. And at the time, Lonnie Franklin was 32, which is also a little late to start your life of crime, but he managed to put a lot into a small period of time. So he says, it's really dangerous out here. There are a lot of crazy young guys who drive badly. Don't wait for the bus. Let me take you to your party. So she, as we all know, women, it's our way to acquiesce. And when someone puts pressure on us, oh, let me do this for you. Let me help you. Whatever they can feel out is a way to get you, they can. And if you let them, and I don't have a problem anymore being rude. It's taken me, 5 decades to be an adult. And I am a codependent people pleaser who bends over backwards. And I think to myself, it's a wonder you're alive, girl. It's a wonder that more bizarre shit didn't happen to you, because I am horribly trusting. And, people could say, oh, let me help you. And I'd be like, no, I don't need help. No. And then, I would be like, okay, don't be okay. Just say no and mean it. And that's something I have this image of me now walking through life like Godzilla, like stepping on buildings, like I'm destroying Tokyo. And I don't mean it, I don't mean it literally, but metaphorically, I'm not taking shit anymore. And some of these beautiful women, I'm not saying they took shit, but they definitely disregarded their beautiful gut instinct, their intuition that told them, I don't need to get in this guy's car. And he is awful and terrible because he doesn't look like you can't trust him. He was always well-dressed, nerdy, actually. He didn't look like, a young man who was blasting hardcore rap and probably the more safe bet. But he looked like a nerd in collared shirts, button-down collared shirts, tucked in, and khaki pants. He looked like a safe bet. Little round face, just didn't look.
That's what gets me about him. Excuse me, when you look at his picture.
Yeah.
Oh, he just looks like an average little schmo.
He does. He really, schmo is a great word. He's not that tall. Just like your everyday guy that you almost wouldn't notice. And maybe that's what he played on to make it work for him. And he made it work. So this beautiful waitress, Laura Moore, gets in his car and they're talking, and it's light and easy and comfortable. There's nothing inappropriate, he says. He invites himself to the party. And she says, oh, you know what? That's fine. It's my friend's party. You can come. That's great. And then he turns to her and shoots her in the chest, in the left side of the chest.
Oh,
he shoots her 4 times. Now, I don't know a lot about guns and ballistics, but it's a .25 caliber pistol. They call it a pocket pistol. I'm guessing it's small. And several of the women, well, actually there are only 2 that survived, but the last person that survived and Laura Moore said, I didn't know what happened at first. I thought I heard something, and then I felt something like pressure on my chest, and then I noticed I was bleeding. She turns to him and says, what did you do? Why did you shoot me? I need to go to the hospital right now. And he laughs at her and shoots her twice more.
So he's shot her now 6 times.
6 times in the chest. I'm sorry. 5 times in the chest, once in the arm, in the left arm. 5 times in the left chest, once in the left arm. She opens the passenger side door And he is trying desperately to pull her back inside, but she breaks free. She rolls out of this dark blue pickup truck and she crawls from an alleyway to the front lawn of a house. And the homeowners hear her at like 6:45 and they alert the police, and they're, paramedics arrive and they're frantically trying to save her. And as they're trying to save her and she can't speak, Lonnie Franklin Jr. drives slowly by.
Oh, that's just awesome.
She's trying desperately to say, it's him, it's him.
Oh, my God.
She's trying to point and she can't speak, and they're working on saving her. And they do.
Oh, my God.
So that's May 29th of 1985, and quite frankly, it was his first, as far as we know, his first attempt, and it failed. It failed. And so he waits a few months. So the first time that we know he succeeds is August 10th of 1985, and that's Deborah Jackson. And she's found in an alleyway on West Gage Avenue in South Los Angeles. And she is shot 3 times in the chest. The second victim is a year later, Henrietta Wright. She's 34, and it's August 12th of 1986, and she is shot and hidden under a mattress. Now, his third victim, again, not exactly definitively tied to him, but through ballistics, it could either be him or he loaned someone his gun. That's the only options that it could be. They took their time tying this victim to him because it's a male. It's a black male. So 2 days after Henrietta Wright, Thomas Steele, who's 36 years old, on August 14th of 1986, he is found shot. Now, there are theories through the LAPD that either Thomas Steele was a friend of Deborah Jackson or Henrietta Wright and figured out it was Lonnie Franklin, and he went after him, or Thomas Steele was a friend of Lonnie Franklin's and figured out it was him, and Lonnie Franklin had to eliminate him. Either way, it is surmised that Thomas Steele figured out who and what Lonnie Franklin was, whether it was to, protect the 2 women, whether it was, apparently Lonnie Franklin was very braggadocious, and a lot of his male friends and even the wives of his male friends and neighbors, he would, talk to them quite openly about women he had at his house, about very violent fantasies that he had. He called them fantasies. And it was always about women injured and attempting to crawl away from him.
So, yeah, fantasies that actually
probably happened.
Yeah.
So a few months after that, Barbara Ware, beautiful 23-year-old, January 10th of 1987. This is where a real big mistake was made. A man saw her being dumped in an alleyway and saw who dumped her and what they were driving. And not only saw that, remembered the exact license plate number.
Oh.
He calls the police immediately. They track the license plate to a van owned by a church in South Los Angeles. They find the van later that night in the parking lot of the church, and they ask who has access to this van. There were potentially 10 men who had access to the van, and they eliminate all of them.
What?
It has never been tied to Lonnie Franklin Jr. There are, again, surmised that he was a member of the church. The church is now defunct. The church is defunct and went bankrupt. He was always a good church-going man. as he's a serial killer, but he always went to church. And they couldn't tie it to him. Now, remember, this is 1987, and they don't tie anything to him ballistically for quite a while. But Barbara Ware was seen being dumped out of the van by a man, wearing dark clothing, possibly Hispanic or African American, and the van was found. And yet.
So I wonder if but he was a member of the church.
We don't know.
Oh, we
the
don't
church
know.
was sort of, loosely.
I see.
A loose congregation.
Jeez.
But there were keys to the van. He would actually pick up people and take them to church wherever he was going. He was that guy who volunteered to drive people who didn't have a way to get to church. So there were approximately 10 men who had access to the keys to the van of this church. And
none of them were him.
Well,
obviously.
I don't know.
No.
I don't know. They said that they discounted them all.
Wow.
And thought that maybe someone borrowed the keys and took the van. And yeah.
Or stole them and made a separate set or something.
Yeah, I don't know, but I know that it's never been tied to him using the van, even though a man saw her being dumped. It told them exactly where the address of the alley where she would be found, and she was. And then she's tied to Lonnie Franklin ballistically. So he waits a few more months. It's now April 15th. Bernita Sparks is 26 years old. She's found in a trash bin. November 1st of 1987, Mary Lowe, 26 years old, found in an alley off of Vermont. Lucretia Jefferson is 22. She's found January 30th of 1988 in a valley off of Western. And Alice Monique Alexander, who went by Monique. Monique Alexander was 18 years old and was found September 11th of 1988 in an alley off of Western. So these women, quite frankly, are all very beautiful. He's got good taste for being a monster. They're all beautiful women. Some of them, most of them, are sex workers, are drug addicts, but some of them are nursing students and women who just maybe are down on their luck, don't have a job, but are taking care of their family. But he has an eye on how to prey on those that are almost invisible in society. And we'll get to that a little later. So he makes the biggest error, other than getting caught. He picks up Anitra Washington, who we only know her name is Anitra Washington now because she feels safe enough to give her last name. The only known survivor other than Laura Moore, who, again, was not definitively tied to him, but we know it was him. So Anitra went by Anitra Margette, and Margette's her middle name. She went by that name for quite a while in any sort of public forum because even the police were saying, look, until we catch him for sure, he may come back to silence you. So it's November 19th of 1988, and she is waiting outside of a mini mart liquor store. And she's walking, and she's got her work clothes on. She's dressed beautifully. And he pulls up in an orange Pinto and says, hey, do you need a ride somewhere? And she's like, oh, no, I'm good. Well, no, let me take you. It's dark. Yeah, let me drive you home. No, really, I'm fine. I'm good. It's, bags aren't heavy. I'm okay. That's the problem with you black women. Nobody can do anything for you. And Anitra takes that. She stops and she thinks. And she's like, you know what? He's right.
And this is exactly what you were talking about at the beginning of the podcast. It's that, I don't want to be perceived as being,
Yeah, snotty, not grateful, all right, I can accept some help. And you know what? I am not suspicious enough. I am definitely not suspicious enough of people in person. I'm suspicious of people online to to my death. I don't trust anyone online, basically, unless I know them from birth. But if you're in person and you're looking me in the eye, I could easily, that's what I'm saying. I am really blessed I'm still here. I'm really blessed I'm still here. So, you know, you don't need to be polite. You just don't need to. You can say, you know, thanks, but I'm good. And walk away. And you can mean it. You can say it and mean it, and no one's going to die, and hopefully not you, but certainly not that man's ego. So she gets in his car again. Nerd. Describes him as a nerd. You know, button down collared shirt and khakis. And he is driving her to her home and says, oh, I need to stop at my uncle's. And he parks in front of, to her recollection, a mustard colored house. He goes into the house and comes back a few moments later. Now, from what we can tell, the mustard colored house could have been a house 2 or 3 doors down from his own home. And he may have gone to get his pistol, but we don't know for sure. But when he comes back, he is talking to Anitria and he shoots her in the chest. And she goes in and out of consciousness. And when she wakes up one of the times, she sees a flash. She sees several flashes. And those are flashes from a Polaroid camera.
Oh, my.
He took pictures of her, as he did with many of his victims, probably most of his victims. And she's beautiful, even as she's lying there close to dying in this piece of shit's car. She's beautiful. It looks like she's sleeping, but you can see some splatters of blood on her coat. It's just awful. I mean, it's just awful. So he pushes her, he rapes her while she's unconscious, and then pushes her out of his car. It's interesting to me the way he does things. He knows, we know he worked for the LA County Sanitation Department, or LA City Sanitation. So he knows alleyways and dumpsters. But sometimes he just pushes women out of his car, just pushes them.
It's like they're garbage.
Yes, exactly. Which is what some of the family members of the victims got to say to his face during his trial, even though he denied every single thing. It was a circus, is how it was described, again, by Christine Pelisek, who has written this wonderful book, The Grim Sleeper. There are so many fantastic articles and information on this case. The LA Times has done a really great job. KPCC, a public radio station, even has fantastic online blogs and journals describing the case. I mean, there's so much great information about this case. There is a documentary, Tales of the Grim Sleeper. I can't get a hold of it. It was made in 2014. I can't find it to save my soul. But there's a People magazine investigates on ID. That's a couple years old. That's very good. It's just, there's a plethora of information, and who knows if we may get more, much like what I'm hoping the Simon Little case, because man, oh man, just, I can't believe the number of victims.
The more as technology improves and all it's incredible to me that you see these serial killers are everywhere, and that the number of victims. You know, when I was growing up, you hear about serial killers, and you'd hear these horrific, things about them killing 9, 10 people, and now you're finding that this guy saying this dude saying he killed 90 people.
90.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, long life and long career as a monster. So Christine Pelisek ends up befriending, sort of adversarially, friending Ed Winter, the LA County coroner at the time. And she asks for reports. And she is, death notices. And she is getting a vibe on cases being linked. And she is the person who has come up with the name The Grim Sleeper. And these two authors who couldn't be less alike, Michelle McNamara and Christine Pelisek, do not write alike. They don't think alike. They're very, very different authors, but both amazing, brilliant women, and both of them came up with the moniker that sticks. So Michelle McNamara came up with the Golden State Killer, which is what Joseph James DeAngelo will be to me forever. And Christine Pelisek came up with the Grim Sleeper because after Anitria Washington survives, Lonnie Franklin takes a 13-and-a-half-year break. And she said it was like he went to sleep. So she calls him the Grim Sleeper. Now, again, it's surmised that he may not have been asleep the entire time, that there may be many more victims, as we know, that are just not tied to him yet.
Yeah. It seems crazy. It's like that long break that DeAngelo took.
Well, there's many theories, and until Joseph DeAngelo actually ever says anything, we won't know why after Janelle Cruz he has no other victims tied to him. Maybe there will be, maybe there won't be. We don't know why he took time off. There's, guesses that it was, birth of children, family, work, geography. So we don't know for sure that Lonnie Franklin took a 13-and-a-half-year break, but we know that the next cases that are attributed to him are the last three that are tied to him. Princess Berthomew, who was 15 and was in the foster system, had moved from Oklahoma and was trying to make a living in Los Angeles and was probably a sex worker. So March 19th of 2002, she was found in an alleyway in some shrubs. And it was probably a little while after she'd been there a little while, which was heartbreaking. Victim number 11, Valeria McCorvey, was found July 11th of 2003. And even though it's a different MO, he did not shoot her, he strangled her. We still know DNA-wise that she is tied to him. And his last known victim, Janicia Peters, was 25. And January 1st, Happy New Year of 2007, he shot her and covered her in an alley with a garbage bag. With a garbage bag.
Yeah.
So the few times that they could have potentially had Lonnie Franklin in their grasp were sad that he was let go, so to speak. Even Laura Moore, back in 1985, described him as 5 feet 8 inches tall, about 140 pounds, between the ages of 25 and 35. He was 32. She's perfect in her description. He was wearing a light blue work shirt and khaki pants, and his ashtray was filled with mechanics tools. The man who was a mechanic for the automobiles used by the LAPD.
Uh-huh.
Wouldn't you know it? And then there is the report of Barbara Ware being dumped in an alley, by the man driving the church van. I mean, got the license plate and the description. Huh. And then in 2003, law enforcement missed a really great opportunity to catch Lonnie Franklin because his DNA was never collected. But in 2003, he was convicted of a felony and was serving 3 years of supervised probation. In 2004, voters passed Proposition 69, which requires that DNA be collected from all felons and everyone arrested on specific charges that they want your DNA. It also requires the expansion of the DNA database. And authorities collected and sorted through thousands of DNA samples. While he was on probation, Franklin's DNA was supposed to be entered into the system, but was not, because probation officers didn't collect samples from people who were on unsupervised probation between November of 2004 and August of 2005.
Wow.
And they said in hindsight, they did not have the resources to collect samples until August of 2005, and he was off of probation.
Well, how many people did he kill after that?
3? 2 to 3.
At least that we know of.
Yeah,
right?
at least that we know of. That we know of. So the women that became victims, the women that disappeared from South Los Angeles, this actually became a really big deal by city leaders because they felt that law enforcement wasn't giving a shit, quite frankly, wasn't caring about the type of women that were being killed, the fact that they were sex workers, the fact that they were drug addicts. The city felt like they just were not getting answers. Even laymen could feel there was a connection. How are all these prostitutes and drug addicts being murdered, left in alleyways and trash bins and dumpsters? It was, in the middle of what apparently in the 80s was a pretty big crack cocaine problem in South Los Angeles. Lonnie Franklin just had great timing, and that there were many cases that were, would come before the women that he chose as victims. But in 1989, there was a coalition formed to protest the LAPD's lack of policing in areas where all of this occurred. And it's the Black Coalition Fighting Back Serial Murders. And they really felt like that the LAPD wasn't taking it seriously. They felt like this was racially motivated. And they felt like that these murders were connected and no one was talking about it. And they were kind of right, because the LAPD saw a pattern in the murders in the late 80s and even in the early 2000s, but they didn't share this with any of the family members of the women that were killed.
Why is it? Was it an investigative thing?
Do you mean the coalition, or do you mean the police?
Why didn't they share that? Yeah. Why didn't the police share this information?
Well, I feel like that's a much bigger question than I can answer on this podcast. It's a bigger question than Christine Pelisek could answer in The Grim Sleeper. It's a bigger question that we're not, there are different police commissioners, there are different police chiefs, that get elected through the years. I don't want to say because it was a more urban part of the city, because the murders were not taking place in, Brentwood. It's hard to look back now and say, why wasn't this released? Why wasn't this so that women could be aware that there was someone on the street, other than just talking amongst themselves? But I mean, we can say, why would Santa Barbara County not admit that there were murders that were related to the Golden State Killer? Because they didn't want to admit that there were murders.
Yeah, I guess.
They said that those were botched robberies, instead of saying, wait a minute, it looks like the same guy. It looks like the same MO. No, we don't know what you're talking. And that's discussing it with other police officials from other jurisdictions. Can you imagine them being open to a neighborhood, to a city that feels like they're under attack.
Yeah, I guess. It really gets under my skin.
It's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking. So next week we'll wrap up this, and we'll find out that there was even a reward posted by the city council. Kind of too little, too late. But I feel like they did try to take some sort of responsibility for not letting the information out. It's different police, detectives tried to breathe new life back into the investigation. They, researched the van. They tracked down, men associated with the church and took DNA samples. One was a retired deacon who lived in Georgia, and one of the other ones was in a prison in Florida, and they got DNA, and they could find nothing to tie the van. They still can't tie the van to Lonnie Franklin, but it's pretty assured that he did it. But it is fascinating and interesting and revolutionary the way that they caught him, which we'll discuss next week. And I'm hungry for pizza because that's how they caught him. And more cowbell.
Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review Just the Tip-Sters. And if you've got a tip for Melissa, give her a call, 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837. Or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. Melissa, want a pizza?
Fuck yeah!